I'm joined by yoga and tantra teacher Morgan Arundel, and we're here to discuss lucid dreaming. First of all, Morgan, what is lucid dreaming?
Lucid dreaming is when we become aware that we're dreaming. So we can wake up, if you like, in the dream state. And when we do that, we gain a certain amount of control over the dream that we're having. We can even change the characters. We can control how the dream's unfolding or the environment of the dream. So essentially, lucid dreaming is about having awareness during the dream experience.
And why would we do it?
Well, there are many reasons. First of all, the experiences that we have in the dream world can be as rich and as fulfilling as the ones we would have in our waking state. We can have dreams of flying. We can have dreams of meeting people, meeting friends. We can have dreams of erotic dreams. We can have dreams of exploring exotic landscapes. And they are experiences that can, as I said, can be really as fulfilling as the ones that we might have when we are awake. But more than this, we can use it as a way of deepening our own personal development. We can go through healing in the dreams. We can get to know ourselves more emotionally and mentally. We can even learn skills, and so it can be used as a way of developing our own psychological, emotional, mental well-being.
Where is the content of our dreams coming from?
Well, this depends on what perspective we take it from, or who we listen to, if you like. From the psychology point of view, the dreams are coming from the subconscious mind, and they are a way that the psyche is kind of communicates into us. The famous psychiatrists like Jung and Freud played great importance to the dream content, because they considered that it was a way that somehow our psyche was trying to tell us things, and by examining that we could reveal different aspects of our behavior and help to overcome emotional, mental issues. So they paid a great attention to that. From the yogi point of view, it's more than just coming from the mind, but there is another dimension of reality that we are exploring, that the dream world is part of the astral world, and so we are exploring that as well.
Do people find it scary to travel to another dimension?
I think so. Some people can find it maybe intimidating that anything can happen and that they sort of don't have control. But I think once you start to gain control and you start to be aware of some of the ways that a dream unfolds, then you can be less frightened by it and actually more excited by it, because then it starts to become something that you can play with, something that you can have amazing experiences in the dreams. Many people have had, for example, the flying dream. I don't know if you've ever had such an experience, but that's quite a common one, where you feel this weightlessness of flying and you're moving through the air and traveling over a landscape. And even if it's not a lucid dream, when you wake up from such an experience, you feel great. You feel like you have had a genuine experience, as if you were having it on your day-to-day life. So they can be really wonderful ways to have these kind of exploration experiences, and it can be very exciting to know that you can actually explore a world there and have those kind of experiences.
How was lucid dreaming first discovered?
So, well, the term lucid dreaming is one that arose in the early 1900s. It was coming from a psychiatrist who coined that term, who was doing a lot of studies then, looking at how dreams could be used to heal mental disorders, or discover more about the individual's emotional and mental well-being. But this is something that's been explored by different traditions for thousands of years. I mean, if you think about it, dreaming is something that we know that we do. We all know that we do, and that would be a fascination to humans since the dawn of our evolution, and so there has been a lot of interest in that, and the yogis and from the different yogic traditions for thousands of years have explored the dream world and have written about it extensively, and they have their own understanding of what's going on there. So it's a bit of a combination of this traditions that have been exploring the dream and the astral world, such as the yogi tradition, and also the modern research that's done into dreaming and into lucid dreaming specifically. Yeah.
How do you learn to control your dreams in lucid dreaming?
So there are many techniques, but the idea is that first you start becoming more aware that you are in a waking state of consciousness, and that the dream state is just another state of consciousness. So it's like there's one thing that we don't do a lot of in our day-to-day life. We don't question, am I awake? We don't think, what state of consciousness am I in right now? That's not something we do, commonly. But actually, we are just living in one state of consciousness, and the dream state is another one. So part of becoming lucid is just becoming more aware of the state that we are in now, and then questioning that. We can even ask ourselves that question: am I dreaming now? Or am I awake? Am I dreaming? Or is this my waking state? And then if we start to do that a bit more habitually, it becomes more second nature to us. And then it's a greater chance that we'll do that when we're in a dream state. And then that's one of the first points of actually waking up in the dream, to question, well, hang on, this is a dream. And then the next thing is to be able to develop the awareness in the dream. Yeah.
Is it difficult to master the techniques of lucid dreaming?
Yes and no. I think that I think anyone can have a basic experience of lucid dreaming. We all have, I think just about everyone has had dreams where we've been semi-lucid, where it's like the first stage of the lucid dreaming, where you are very aware that, like, afterwards you have great dream recall, for example, and you feel a different state from the kind of the dream that you had. So that's kind of the first stage of lucid dreaming, where your dream recall is really good, and you can remember a lot of details around the dream, and it feels just more like an ordinary memory of something that you did. So this is something that you can develop quite easily. And I think it's very easy for most people to start having these kind of semi-lucid dreams. The next stage starts getting a little bit trickier, where you start having full awareness. And I know in my own practice, that was the first thing, was getting awareness in the dream, but then not having a lot of control over what's going on. So I think that's the next level. You get to a kind of awareness of your dreams, but then you still don't really have control over what's going on. Then to get to that next level, where you can start to control the environment, the characters, the narrative, how the story is the dream is unfolding. Yeah, that takes a little bit more practice.
What would be the advantage of wanting to do that?
Well, there are many advantages, and we can start with, let's say, the approach from just a human psychology point of view, just like understanding how does the human being work and what is the cause of, what's behind our behavior. So I think there have been studies that have looked at it from that point of view, and then also from the let's say psychiatry point of view, of understanding and seeing that if we can become lucid in our dreams, then we can actually understand at a deeper level what's happening. Basically we can affect our psychological development by being lucid in the dreams. We can maybe we can face a fear, for example, that is something that we have that causes a lot of anxiety in our life, and then we can actually become conscious, and we can face that fear in the dream, and we can resolve that issue. So there can be actually quite a lot of emotional and mental healing that could be the result of lucid dreaming. So I think this is kind of the first stage, this kind of first effect, benefit of doing it, which would be psychological development, emotional well-being. There's some research that's being done recently where they're looking at actually developing skills in the dream world. So the idea that you can do a kind of training, if you like, while you're dreaming, and that can actually affect your physical performance.
So if I was wanted to improve my ability to get shots in as a basketball player, say, for example, and I woke up in my dream and then I was constantly shooting that basketball into the net, would it then mean that I could translate that into the next match? I would be a hero.
Yeah. Well, the studies show that this is actually true, that this does happen, that people who do a kind of training and get control, so you need a certain amount of lucidity in the dream to be able to stay there and continue to shoot hoops, with a basketball, and if you do have that control, it's shown that in your daily life your physical performance can be improved. So imagine that. What they're proposing now is that we could even undergo forms of training, for a life skill. We have all sorts of training for our business, for our work, for our careers, for the hobbies and sports that we might pursue, and we could undergo some of that training in our dream. And just think about it. We, the ordinary human being, is asleep for 26 years of their life.
Gosh, now, that's a lot.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that's, from some perspective, you could say that's a time wasted. Now, just imagine if we could gain some of that time and we could use it constructively, and we could develop skills, we could heal things, we could even acquire new knowledge and learning, then that would be an extraordinary thing. And that's exactly what is proposed by lucid dreaming and is even shown through studies to be the case.
How would you learn new knowledge? Would it be simply asking a question before you go to sleep and passionately, intensely wanting the answer? Yeah,
that is one of the ways that can be done. Our dreams are very much influenced by what we do right before we enter the dream state, so right before we go to sleep. So a lot of the practices are about setting intention before you go to sleep, even using affirmations, things like I'm conscious of my dreams, I enter my dreams consciously, and I remember them fully when I awake, things like this. Or tonight I'll remember my dreams and I will be aware that I'm dreaming and I will take control of the dream world. And things like these kind of affirmations and intentions that you set before you go to sleep can affect the dreams that you have a lot and your chances of becoming lucid. And if you give them an orientation, then there's a good chance that you can have a result in that dream that will correspond to that direction that you give in the waking state. To give you an example of that, when it's done more unconsciously, if you were to watch a movie right before going to bed, maybe you're into martial arts and you watch 4 hours of martial arts movies, there's a good chance that in your dream you're going to be doing some martial arts there. So you've somehow given your dreams a direction. But imagine if you could say, I want to learn about this, I want to learn about this aspect. Then perhaps in your dream you might meet a character, and that character starts to tell you a story or to give you information about that. And that's very exciting. And
Sounds very empowering. So you could, for example, decide to meet loved ones who've died, or you might meet somebody who is suffering and then see them on the astral plane as being perfectly healthy and well, which would be very touching.
Yeah, indeed. And that could go a long way to healing, some kind of sadness or that you might have over someone's passing, and having a confirmation that a part of them still exists and that they are okay, and even the fact that you could communicate with them, that's a very comforting and reassuring kind of experience. Yeah, indeed.
So the more people get used to being on this other dimension, being awake in the astral plane, Does that help people when they think about dying, passing on, losing their physical body?
Yeah, well, this is where we could take some of the perspective from the yoga tradition, because in that tradition they believe that this place that we go to when we're dreaming is not just a projection of the mind, but it is actually another dimension, a dimension that is as real as this physical dimension that we live in, and that going into that state consciously, we are entering another world, and we can explore that dimension, and we can learn to become more familiar with it. That's what they call the astral dimension. And so when we leave the body in the moment of death, then we are entering into these astral dimensions, into some other more subtle dimensions. So if we're familiar with it while we're still alive, then that might familiarize ourselves with the process of dying, and we could even be more conscious in that process. And that sounds like an extraordinary thing to do, but this is indeed what the yoga tradition says is possible, that there is a way of leaving the body consciously, and of course that would require great awareness of those dimensions, and it would require a skill of being able to stay awake and stay aware while you pass through those other dimensions. Yeah.
So that brings me to connection to source and discovering your authentic self.
Yeah, so this is an integral part of what we are as multidimensional human beings. We have the physical body that we're all very familiar with, and we're so familiar with exploring the physical dimension, mainly through our senses and through our perceptions, and but that's just one part of us. And the next part of us is our astral body, and we could say that to a certain extent this is more real in some ways. I mean, that's having awareness of both the physical body and the astral body brings us to a greater awareness of what we are. And then of course there are deeper levels of ourself, going to the supramental bodies and the causal bodies, and even the divine spark that's within each of us, the spirit, the soul, the consciousness that is at the fundamental level of who we are as conscious beings. So when we start to get lucid and explore that astral world, then it's bringing us closer to those more subtle dimensions of our being, and bringing us closer to what we truly are.
And in terms of out-of-body experiences, how is that connected to lucid dreaming?
Yeah, so an out-of-body experience is when we are awake and we do some kind of technique to consciously project ourselves into our mind, into the astral dimension. So it's similar to lucid dreaming, but you're starting from the waking state, and you're doing a conscious projection of the mind, whereas lucid dreaming is something that you enter during the dream state, and you're waking up into the dream, and then you are, if you like, entering a similar dimension, but the way you access it is differently. Out-of-body experiences can also happen via some shocking experience, like often people experience that in an accident, and then they or some kind of exceptional experience where they are forced to focus very intensely, and then they suddenly find themselves outside of their body, looking down on their physical body, and very often that's quite a scary experience when it happens. But yeah, they are out-of-body experiences, so they're different ways of accessing those subtle dimensions.
Have you ever had any out-of-body experiences or any frightening lucid dreaming experiences?
Yeah, well, before I learnt about yoga and tantra and the reality of these kind of dimensions, and that such a thing was possible, I did have an experience where I was focusing upon a sound, a physical sound, and I was trying to see how long I could hear that sound as it got quieter and quieter. Actually, it was getting more high-pitched, and the pitch was increasing, and with each increase in pitch, I had to focus even more powerfully to try and hear the sound. And at a certain moment, due to that very intense concentration, I just suddenly found myself outside of the building that I was in, looking down on the building and just kind of floating in some strange dimension. And of course, it was very frightening and shocking, and I immediately kind of pulled me back into my body, and I had no idea what that experience was. But yeah, later I came to learn that that's just a standard kind of out-of-body experience, and from there I started to get interested in lucid dreaming and exploring it, and having a whole wide range of experiences. Sometimes I would say not so much frightening, but a bit exhilarating, let's put it that way. And other times really blissful experiences. Yeah.
Lovely. And what about Yoga Nidra? How does that enter the picture?
Yeah, Yoga Nidra is a branch of yoga which ultimately is teaching us it's training us to separate the consciousness from the body. We are so much identified with the physical structure that we don't even feel that we exist outside of the waking state. You know, you think about it, when we go to sleep, it's just like we're very unconscious in that process. First of all, you go into this deep sleep where you have absolutely no recall of what took place. It's just blank. You think about those moments, complete blank. It's like you don't exist in those moments. Well, Yoga Nidra is training us to shift from the waking state to the dream state consciously. So it's training us to remain aware while we shift from one state of consciousness to another. And it's done by different, often Yoga Nidra is mistakenly thought of as just some alternative relaxation exercises, because very often you're laying down, you're doing it in a very relaxed state, and it's often just taught as, you know, some kind of advanced relaxation. But in fact, it's an entire branch of yoga that is teaching us to go consciously through different states of consciousness, or to be aware as we shift from one state to another. So if you can do that from the waking state to the dream state, then you can be fully awake in the dream world. So yeah, this is a great training for becoming lucid in the dreams and for consciously projecting in the astral worlds.
And I presume you get to know your mind extremely well, and you can start to direct it in directions that you would like it to go, as opposed to being a victim.
Yeah, well, that's where the control element comes in, because until you have control, you're just a character in something that's unfolding, right? You think about your dream, all sorts of crazy stuff is going on there, and you're in a car, and then all of a sudden that car turns into a horse, and then it dissolves, and then you're standing on a beach, and then the next thing you know, you're talking to someone and they turn into a tree, and all these bizarre things happen in your dream. And then you meet someone who you recognize, and then you start talking to them, and they turn into someone else, and you wake up just like, what was that? You're having these very bizarre kind of experiences. So yeah, they don't kind of mean a lot to us when it's like that. But when we get control, they start to be much more significant, and we start to, I would say the first stage is when we start to wake up feeling different from the kind of dream that we had, and then to even go to that next step where you think that, well, this is something that I can have control of. I can exert my will in this. I can have the kind of experience that I want. I can actually choose the experience that I have while I'm dreaming. That's an extraordinary thing to be able to do. Yeah.
Where can you go to learn these techniques, and does it take long to master them?
So I think the best way to do it is to do some kind of training course, like a workshop, or some kind of training in lucid dreaming, because it's very good to immerse yourself into the idea of lucid dreaming. It's actually one of the ways that you can even be better at lucid dreaming, or to even start the lucid dreaming experience, is simply by listening to other people's experiences or reading about them. So reading about them is a great way to start as well. and then getting the theory behind it, like understanding what's actually happening, to hear that it is, proven and shown kind of scientifically that this is a real phenomenon, that this does actually happen. And then to get deeper perspectives, such as the ones coming from the yoga tradition, that show that this has been something that's been explored for thousands of years, and there's a huge body of knowledge that supports lucid dreaming. So yeah, I would say this is kind of the way to begin with it.
And if you are listening to this and you're a yogi already on the spiritual path, what would you encourage them to do?
Start trying to lucid dream. Start gaining some of that wasted time, that time that we lose every day. We lose a third of our day just is kind of unconscious. And of course we need sleep to regenerate the body, and to go through all sorts of healing and realignment and harmonizing of our being. But there's a great deal of time that we could gain and we could use. Imagine if you're a yogi and you could use that time to meditate. That would be amazing. You could do your meditation practice. You could all of a sudden double your meditation practice. Or you could do yoga postures, and you could do those difficult yoga postures that you can't do in the physical dimension. You can actually perform them in the astral. That's actually one of the more remarkable experiences that I've had personally, is when I was able to start using mantras in the dream world. Mantras that I'm using in my daily meditations. And that was an extraordinary experience. So from the point of view of a yogi, you could double your practice time just by gaining some of this time that we would normally spend in an unconscious state dreaming. And that's pretty exciting. Or even more, we could meet enlightened beings, we could meet spiritual masters, and we could get guidance from them, we could get teaching from them. So yeah, we could just continue our spiritual pursuits in the astral world.
And what about friends? Can you meet people in the astral world through lucid dreaming?
Yes, you can. You can meet others, and that's a wonderful experience that you can have, to meet people. And it's even a way that you can validate your dream experience. You can plan to meet with a friend, and at a certain time you can set your alarm clocks to wake up and then go back into the dream state and try to consciously meet one another. And that's a really wonderful way of practicing lucid dreaming. And another extraordinary application of lucid dreaming is to meet your loved one in the dream and to have erotic experiences, the astral lovemaking, as it's called. So this might be, perhaps you're separated by distance from your loved one, and you could actually meet them in the astral world and have wonderful, sublime, erotic experiences together. And yeah, this is a very extraordinary application of lucid dreaming.
It sounds fascinating. Morgan, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.